Welcome everyone, this is Greg Rock, and today's webcast is going to be featuring technology leader Ricoh Australia, taking us through a first-hand account of how standardized approach to process mapping has helped drive everything from process simplification to empowering teams to creating a better and more consistent customer experience. As the members of BPM Institute, I know the most popular webcasts that we feature throughout the year are those that have practitioners like yourselves sharing their experiences with BPM. And so we're thrilled to have Declan O'Reilly with us. Declan is a business excellence manager at Ricoh Australia. He's an experienced senior manager with more than 15 years of working experience with ERP and business intelligence systems. And he works with people at all levels across the organization to identify and implement improvements that transform the business and provide value to customers and staff. Declan is joining us today from Australia. And so we're thrilled, Declan, to have you and Ricoh as part of our webcast series for 2017. BPM Institute, as you know, provides education to BPM practitioners around the globe through training, education, and certification programs and webcasts like we're featuring today. So without further delay, I'd like to turn things over to Declan O'Reilly.
That's great. Thanks, Greg, and thanks everyone for hopping on. My role is business excellence manager for Ricoh in Sydney, and what I'm hoping to share with you over the next half an hour, 40 minutes, is what we have done over here for continuous improvement, particularly for process management. What prompted Ricoh to get serious about this? What we did, and what we did well, what we didn't do so well, and what we learned along the way. How we've extended this to benefit all of our different customers, and what we have learned back from them about how Ricoh can improve things and also do things better, benefits and the lessons learned. So a quick rundown on Ricoh, and for anybody who hasn't heard of Ricoh before, we're a workplace technology company. We're based in Sydney in Australia, and we have offices all across the country. We have roughly 1,100 employees, and we have a large dealer network, roughly 100 right across the whole country. Our main business is office equipment. We have a national fleet of over 100,000 machines, and we also have a very diverse product range, which includes projectors, software solutions, and IT services. Our customers range from Bob the Builder, very small, right the whole way up to Fortune 500 companies, including the big banks like Westpac and NAB. So moving swiftly along, the challenges that we experienced 2 or 3 years ago was the company was going through quite a lot of change. So it was a very big motivator for Ricoh to become very serious about changing how we did things and making our processes better so that everyone right across the company was on the very same page. So our reason for change was that the company doubled in size over about 4 or 5 years. We did that through acquisition. We also integrated with another company called Lanier, and during that time our headcount also doubled from 550 up to around 1,100. We introduced some new product lines for our projectors and IT services. We had some new markets that we moved into. We had a lot of new customers, particularly major customers, which included 3 of the 4 big banks in Australia, and each of those banks have about 30,000 staff each. And what that meant for us is that we had to change the way that we operated. And rather than having technicians go out on sites to fix machines, we based machines permanently on each of those major customer sites. So it was a very different way for us to operate. And lastly, we had some new work practices. And by that I mean that we had to practice what we preached through activity-based working. We moved all the warehouses into one big warehouse on the seaboards, which you can see in the picture in the bottom left. And we also had quite a lot of our customers who wanted to reduce paper. And given that that was our core income stream for the last 10, 15 years, We knew that we had to change. We had to change rapidly, and we looked to better process management as the best way to do that. So looking at the quality system we had at the time, it was very broken up, very broken up into different systems. So our existing quality system was made up of roughly 300 different process maps, and they were mainly done in Microsoft Visio. The challenge we had with that is that not too many people across the company knew Microsoft Visio and how to use it. So we were very limited in how we could put process maps together and get those maps out there to different teams right across the company. We also had a lot of procedures which were done using a combination of Wiki and Microsoft Word. We had roughly 200 forms which were done in PDF and Excel. We had quite a lot of policies which were also in Wikis and Adobe PDF. So in summary, our quality system was broken up between 4 or 5 different systems. It wasn't very easy to use. It wasn't easy for people to find different procedures and different processes, and it just wasn't working for us. So this slide that you have up here in front of you is one of those 300 process maps that I mentioned. It does describe what happens. There's the different streamlines on the left-hand side, and there's the different steps throughout the map. But that said, it's a very busy map, and it is very difficult to read and very difficult to maintain. The slide also shows who does what and when, but it just wasn't very clear to read. Another big problem for us is that we didn't have any ownership. So although we had these very pretty process maps, it wasn't clear to people right across the company who was the owner for each of these maps. And if they had any questions, who was the best person for them to go and talk to. We had no means of feedback, so if any person across the company had a question on how a particular process operated, there was no means other than email or picking up the phone for them to try and chase down and ask a question of whoever was the owner for the process on what they wanted to find out. And lastly, we had no standard learning. So the feedback we were getting from quite a lot of departments was that found the quality system very difficult to use. So they maintained their own notes op system, typically on local hard drives. They also had cheat sheets, and what we found is that as the company was rapidly increasing in size, this was having a very big impact on induction, where we were primarily relying on peer-to-peer learning. So we didn't have anything standard. So with new offices, with turnover increasing, lots and lots of new people joining the company, we knew that there had to be a much better way of operating. So we sat down, we formed a working group, and we decided that before we looked for an answer, we had to work out what our basic needs were. So what we found is that if we didn't change, we would struggle to look after our existing customers, let alone look after the new major customers that we had taken on. We would struggle to learn from what was working well and not so well. So we would be missing a massive opportunity to get better. We didn't have the means to collect our ideas from staff or even from our customers. And it wouldn't be easy for us to determine which processes were being used and not being used. And from that then work out which ones could be improved. So looking at the internal needs within the company, we knew that we had a very compelling need for ownership and processes, whereby we wanted different teams right across the company to take responsibility for the processes that fell within their area. We also wanted to make it very easy for any person to know who they could contact if they had any questions. Ease, whichever system that we decided to go with, had to be very easy to use, had to be very easy for any person to find what they're looking for quickly. And we wanted there to be a big incentive for people to get their content away from local hard drives and away from cheat sheets and into the system. Online, roughly half of our workforce are not in the office. They're out and about, and they're going from customer site to customer site. and that would be a mix-up of our sales team and technicians in the field. So wherever system that we went with, it had to be available online and again be quick and easy to use. And lastly, it had to be current. So with so much change happening right across the company, we needed to find some system that was easy to keep current, and we also wanted to put regular regular catch-up periods on there, so that every 12 months or so the process owners would be incentivized to go back in, have a quick look over their process, and just make sure that that those processes conveyed the way that process was being used. So pretty much what it boiled down to is that we knew that there had to be a better way of doing things. We knew we had to get the culture right. And the culture had to be clear, it had to be from the very top, it had to be communicated right down to every staff member right across the company. Quality, whatever we did, we had to keep the customer front and center in our minds. If we don't have any customers, we don't have the company. So the quality, we knew it would come from having processes that that would show what products and services that we are providing to our customers. And systems, we needed to have a system that was above and beyond, and it would facilitate continuous improvement going forward. Ultimately, it was all about getting the process right, and not about having a blame game between different teams. So we looked at what other companies were using out in the market, and after forming a team, we decided to use ProMap. And what we did then over the following months is that we moved all of our content away from our existing systems into ProMap, and we'll cover that over the next few slides. This slide here, I just want to go through some Ricoh values. So these are defined by our global company in Japan, and we've got 5 core values which kind of do feed into our process and our culture here in Sydney and Oz. So the first one is winning spirit, meaning that we're always looking for a better way to get things done. And we also encourage staff to continuously challenge what they do. Innovation, that speaks for itself. So we're always looking for better ways and better solutions to look after our different customers. Teamwork, so by that I mean we have respect for each other, and we work with each other to learn and improve. And we keep coming back to process. Customer-centric, everything had to relate back to the customer. And it wasn't just sales, it was also our back office teams, so that every single person right across the company was on board to give the best possible outcome to our customers. And lastly, ethics, so whereby every single person right across the company takes ownership and responsibility for the actions that they take. Supporting that, we had some governance. So we knew we had to identify some subject matter experts, and we also had to give them encouragement and incentives to own and look after their different processes. Supporting that, we also have compliance commitments. So Ricoh in Australia, we're certified to 3 ISO standards, 9001 for quality, 14001 for environment, and 27001 for information security. We're also certified to carbon neutral, which means that the company offsets any emissions it makes right across the country, and we also do the same for any devices which are being used by some of our major customers. So I'm just going to take you through what we did here in terms of rollout, and how we went from an old fragmented system with Visio maps and Word documents and Adobe PDFs and Excel spreadsheets, and how we moved away from that to a system that it fit for purpose. It would mean that we could provide best possible outcome for our internal staff and for our customers out in the marketplace. So, as I mentioned, after forming a working group and looking at our different needs, we decided to go with ProMap, and we used that to move away from the old systems that we had. We had a pilot program for a month. That was back in November 14. We picked 10 change advocates right across the company, and we picked 4 different business areas. And those business areas, 2 of them were customer facing, namely our product team and our delivery team, and 2 were internal, and they were the business excellence team under myself and our HR team. We had training which went for a day and a half, and that was to make sure that every one of those 10 people were fully versed in how to use the system. And what we found is that we were able to take our existing processes and convert them into the new system very quickly, to encourage ownership and keep executive buy-in. We demonstrated those results back at the next quarterly management meeting. So that consists of the senior management and roughly 40 to 50 middle managers from all departments right across the company. And we got the different change advocates from those 4 different teams to present what they had created. And that in turn created momentum for change. And what we found after presenting at that meeting is that we had walk-ups from other teams right across the company looking to get involved and looking to find ways that they could take their existing content away from local hard drives and away from documents that were off system and get them into the system. We found that we had really good buy-in, and we kept supporting comms from the managing director and the whole executive team, and we have regular communication every 2 to 3 weeks where they communicated what process was important and how getting the process right would be of interest to the company and to our customers. And very quickly that created momentum right across the board for everyone to get behind the program and get the processes onboarded and into the system. And to help make that happen, we went to every business area and we asked them to nominate a process champion who helped drive the change for their area. To support that, we had short training sessions, roughly 90 minutes. We ran them every 2 to 3 weeks, and those training sessions included stuff like the reasons to use the new system, the basics on how to use it, which took roughly half an hour, the standards and the best practices that we wanted them to apply. So that would include how processes issues should be named, the maximum recommended number of steps in each different process, and then the latter half of each training session was his practice. So then, following up each training session, we also had some learning content, and the business excellence team offered them to go out and sit with each one of those teams and help them walk through the first one or two processes until they were comfortable that they were able to look after their own processes going forward. The communication was key. We had regular updates on the company intranet and in the weekly company newsletter on what was happening with ProMap. It was very important for us to mark the wins and just to publicize the benefits on what every different team was experiencing back from using the new system, and that in turn created an opportunity and a big drive for other teams to come on board to share their content and bring it back into the system. After a few months, we had regular meetings of the process champions from each different team, and the purpose of those meetings was to share the progress that they had learned from the new system, and also to share the different lessons that they had learned. It was also an opportunity for them to discuss any problems that they had, go over any new features and functionality, and also to share best practice and their lessons on how best to use the new system. So the net result, which you can see from the slide here, was that after 12 months we had deployed the system right across the company. Every single process was documented. We experienced roughly a 4-fold increase in the number of processes that were documented on our system. And what we found is that roughly 10% of those processes were done in conjunction with our customers. So those processes were typically how we would bill customers, how we would use service calls, or the toner, look after invoicing, and so on. So for me personally, it was a very big insight that if we gave adequate training to people and if we showed them how to use the system, and if you made a compelling case and had regular comms, that people wanted to get their content into one single system that was easy to use. And proof of the pudding was that the fact that after 12 months we had almost four times the number of processes that we had to begin with. The biggest lesson to me is that simple works. And so what I'm going to show you over the next few slides is it's a quick insight into the system that we now use here in Ricoh in Australia for looking after our processes. So this is our home page. So this is the main company overview page for the whole company. So each one of these boxes here is a process group, and rather than taking the traditional silo view of the company, we went for a customer value stream. So looking at the first 9 boxes, they typically show the customer lifecycle or the product lifecycle. So starting in the top left, we launch a product, and it goes from there then into a sales opportunity. We may or may not decide to add on some software solutions to complement the hardware. We get some stock in to support the orders. We then, if it's a brand new customer, we'll go through the number of credit checks. We'll take an order from the customer. Once the order has been processed, we'll place the customer onto a service contract. We'll deliver the machine and services. We'll invoice the customer, and then over the next 4 to 5 years, for the duration of the contract, we will provide service for the hardware and services, and that we'll do some product recycling and hopefully go back to the very beginning and restart the whole life cycle there again. What we found over the last 2 years is that for new customers who are coming into Ricoh, we've been able to show them this map and show them exactly how the company operates, and also show them how we can look after them at different stages in the whole customer life cycle. It's also been very useful for us when we bring new people on board. So traditionally they've only seen how their department operates, but by showing them this view, they were able to see how the whole company operates and where exactly that their department or team fits into the company. In the bottom right, we've got 2 other process groups in green, and those process groups show processes that we have defined in conjunction with some of our major customers. So one unknown benefit for us, or one unexpected benefit for us at the beginning, was when we were giving training to different branches in different states right across the country. What we found is that those branches were going back to their main customers, and they were documenting the main processes that they have with those customers. So by doing so, it made perfect sense for us to keep a record of those processes in the same system as the main company processes, which is what we have here. The internal processes on the left-hand side, the second last group from the bottom, that contains groups for every other department at Ricoh that we need to run the company, but they don't impact directly on customers. So that would be departments like the HR department, IT, or corporate accounts, and the business access team. And lastly, the training group in the bottom left-hand corner. So what we found is that after giving training to different groups, we found it was in our interest to develop a process group that had common training materials for how people could use the system, and top 10 reasons for using the system, and we also had some exercises for them to practice. So what we found over the last 2 years is that it's been a very useful group for us to induct new people onto the system. And also for existing staff right across the company, if they haven't used ProMap for the last month or two, that they can go back in and they can go into that training group. They can do a few exercises, and that gets them back up to full speed there again. What I'm going to show you in the next slide, I'm going to look at the box here highlighted in the middle for the customer service request resolution group. The next slide, I'm going to show you what would happen if you were to click on that and drill in. So what you can see here, it's a high-level view of the process group, and this covers how we support customers when they contact Ricoh. So it covers everything from our National Contact Centre, which looks after supporting our hardware, our software, and our IT services. And it also goes into the back office teams that provides second level and third level support. So any person right across the company can click on any of these groups, and they can see exactly what happens within each of those groups. What we found is that when we put these groups together, the reaction from our customer service team was, wow, that they didn't realize that there was so much involved with what they did to looking after our customers. And when we show this to customers, and we do show this to every new customer that comes to Ricoh, is that this shows that Ricoh is very organized to provide them with the necessary backup and help that they need during their term with Ricoh. And lastly, it also helps us for any detailed questions that we get back from customers, and also for tender requests if we are going to market. On the next slide, I'm going to bring you through some processes that we've built for some key customers. So as I mentioned earlier, we have roughly 11,000 customers. They range from very small operators like Bob the Builder, right the whole way up to some Fortune 500 companies. And some of those customers have a very defined way on how things need to be done. So it might be something simple like operating hours when technicians can be on site, or induction processes that they must go through before they can enter certain risky sites. So the following slide that I will show you is an example from a live customer process that we've developed in conjunction with one of our major customers in Melbourne. Just moving swiftly along here. So I've blocked out the customer name to protect the, just to protect the. So at the top we've got three different tabs. We've got the map and the procedure tab, and we've got an edit tab which is marked with number 1. So the way it works is that with the new system, we define steps and tasks in each different step, and it basically works like a checklist. We also set default review periods of 12 months. And what that means is that if a process doesn't change within that time, that the nominated owner and expert for the process will they'll get a reminder after 12 months to go back in, check that the process is current, and if it's not current, they have an opportunity to make any changes and bring it back up to currency. Looking very quickly over the map here, I've already mentioned number 1. Number 2 here in the top left shows that every single task on the process has an owner, and you can have more than one owner if you need to. And the benefit there is that this shows clearly what party is responsible for every single task within the process. The number 3 on the right here, what we found with the new system is that it isn't just textual. We have the benefit of bringing in some rich content, which could include forms, it could include videos, images, and web links. So in this case here, beside number 3, we've embedded a custom form that we've developed with the customer. And what that means is that when the customer is looking over this process, rather than having to go off and look for the link for that form, they can click on the link for the form from this process here directly. Number 4, you have the option if you wanted to add timeframes. What we have found is that for some of our customer-facing processes, this is very useful, and it shows the customer what the expectation is in terms of turnaround time. So if we or the customer log a service call, we can show that they can expect one of our technicians to be on site within 2 hours. However, what we have found is that although having timeframes on there is handy, the majority of our processes don't use this, like notably the back office processes. Number 5, up on top here, is that you can see that this process is at version 30. So what that shows is that all the processes are going through continuous improvement every single day. So we encourage customers to give feedback in number 6. And every bit of feedback that we get from customers and internal staff is an opportunity for us to go back, make that process better. So typically, if a customer has a question about how a process operates, it means that the process hasn't covered that question already. So what we would normally do is that we would address the question and get an answer back to the customer. And then once we've done that, we'd go back into the process and we'd try to refine the process and incorporate the answer into the process so that the next time around that hopefully the process will cover that question should the customer ask it. And number 7 up on top here, there's a share link. And this is probably one of the best features from the new system. And what that means is that if a person is talking through a process up on screen, they can very quickly and easily share the process with any person. And to me, this is probably one of the best features from the new system. And it means that if we do share a process with a person while we're discussing the process over the phone, that both parties can look at the process in real time. And it just makes the whole discussion far, far easier. So once you've built your procedure, following the steps where you have activities and then tasks within the activity, what we found is that the system that we're using here then builds a process map, which is the view that you have here. So there's no need for any of our staff to use Microsoft Visio. The system looks after building the process map. And using the owners that we had in the previous page where step 1 is looked after by the customer, step 2 is done by the account manager and the customer service manager, that then translates into different lanes on the process map. So looking at this, it's a very simple view, but it shows quite clearly at the top level how the whole process works, who does what, and when. We also have a glossary so that if you can't really see it here, but in the top left, term for OMIC is underlined. And what that means is that if I was to hover on that, I can have a much greater, deeper meaning for that would then get displayed back to the user for that process. With these processes too, we have shared them directly with our customers, and what they have done is that they've embedded links for these processes on their own help desk sites. And the glossary tags that I'm just after mentioning, they're also available for customers to refer to. So at the moment, at Ricoh, we've got roughly 300 terms in our glossary, and I'd say ballpark about 40 to 50 of them are from customers. What we've learned over the last 2 years is that it's good practice to include the customer name in the process name. And what that means is that if you are going to search on a process that you can search by the particular process, which might be billing, reporting, or invoicing, or if you're looking for a particular customer, you can search on their customer name. If you have defined time steps or time frames, they will display against each different step. But as I mentioned earlier, our own experience here is that this works very well for the processes which are customer facing, but for a lot of internal processes, that hasn't been the case, and we haven't had needs to add time frames. And the last thing I'll mention here is that at the bottom of the screen we've got different tags. So for each different process, what we found with the new system is that we have the ability to collect and look at different feedback. So here, for example, somebody, Ben here, has, like mentioned, he's put forward an opportunity to improve the process, and we in turn we would have taken that, and we would then have gone in and we have changed the process, incorporated that feedback from Ben, and moved on to the next version of the process from there. With changelog, we have the ability to roll back to different versions if we want to. It's very easy, and it also means that we're also able to compare what has changed from version 1 to version 2 to version 3, and so on. What we have found recently is that when we have shared this with our audit teams for the financial audits and for quality audits, they love this. This is one of the best features that they like from the process, and it just shows that we've got really good governance in place. There's also a systems tab, which you can see here, but the systems tab will show what different systems across the company are being used within the process. And our experience is if we're doing any upgrades to if we're doing any upgrades to systems, that we're able to run a report to show where the systems are being used in different processes, and that in turn means that we're able to notify the different teams who will be affected, and we can also check and see very easily if we need to change any processes or procedures afterwards. So the benefits, what we found is that the benefits fall into 4 main areas. Our quality management system is now in one single system as opposed to 4 or 5 different systems beforehand. It's still a work in progress. We still have some gaps to be closed. But by having one single repository, it's very simple to use. It's effective. We have lots of ownership. We have the ability to collect feedback. We have a glossary, as mentioned, of 300 terms. And we have a view of all of our systems and how those systems are being used in processes right across the company. We've also moved away from the silo view, where different departments look at their own departments in isolation. But we've moved from that into a customer value stream view. And that shows exactly where everyone fits into the whole picture, and who our internal and external, our internal and our external customers are. From a customer perspective, it was a totally unexpected win, but probably one of our major wins. So as I mentioned, when we trained the branches around the country, they in turn went back to the customers, and they worked with the customers to document exactly how they needed to interact for billing, reporting, service calls, and so on. And the feedback that we had from those customers is a whole new level of transparency with Ricoh. And in effect, it has made those customers more sticky with Ricoh, and we have a far deeper, closer relationship with them. Induction. Given that our staff numbers have doubled over the last 2 or 3 years, having a system like this has been very, very helpful. And it has meant that we've reduced our ramp-up time. We've reduced inconsistencies. And by having rich content with videos and images and forms, it's been far, far easier for new starters to Ricoh to check and see how the company operates, and to give us feedback to see if processes that we have documented are easy to follow. And lastly, systems. We have a number of internally developed systems, and we didn't have any help from those systems there before. So what we've done is that we have built processes to describe how those systems should be used, and then we've embedded links for those processes directly into those systems. Just moving on here again. Continuing with the benefits is we found that it has to be simple. If it isn't simple, people won't use it. And we found that with the new system, the new ProMap, it has to be very, very simple for us. And typically most of our users are up and running using the system within half an hour. And every month we run a report here just to look at our top 10 users. And typically every one of those top 10 users come from different branches and different teams right across the company. And they don't come from the traditional business access team. It's been very effective for us to enforce compliance. So we use the system heavily for both internal and external audits, and for ISO and financial audits. And what we found is that the system has changed the mindset from something that people didn't like doing to something that they actually want to do. We have really good ownership. So every single process that we have now has a defined owner and expert. And what that means is that if the person is looking at a process, they have a name of a person that they can go to if they have any further questions. Transparency is very important. So having the ability to give feedback and also to see where a process is at with different version numbers, it just helps keep everyone on the very same page. What we have found as well is that you need to have constant training. So typically we run a 90-minute training session every 2 to 3 weeks. And as I mentioned, it covers the basics of the system, goes through the best practice standards for how to use the system, and then the latter half of that session are exercises on how to best use the system. Wins, it's very important to celebrate wins and to do that often, and to publicize the benefits that every single team is experiencing from the system. And that in turn creates an opportunity for other teams to learn and to share. And the final numbers is that, as I mentioned, like we've gone from having 300 processes documented and in a system in November 2014, and to having 4 times that on the system by February 16. And since then, I ran a quick report there this morning, and I think we're up to around the 1,200 mark. And we're also able to measure when processes are getting used, and that's been a very big win for us. And that in turn, when we feed that back to different teams, it has created a very compelling case for them to keep the processes current when they see that those processes are being used by different people. But my final note on that is that it doesn't have to be perfect, as processes, by their very nature, they keep on changing and they keep on improving. Which brings me to this slide, and I think that Deming summed it up best, where he said, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you simply don't know what you're doing. So the key message from that process is important. If you get it right, everyone is on the very same page, and it makes things a lot easier. And if you get your processes right, it can transform how your company operates, and it can certainly transform, in my experience, how you look after your customers. And that's it. So thank you for your time and for your patience, and I hope you found that interesting. And on that note, I'd like to hand you back to Greg.
All right, Declan, well, thank you so much, and we appreciate you walking us through that. It certainly sounds like you guys have really been able to really embrace BPM and leverage the capabilities of ProMap. But I wanted to thank you for taking us through that, and for the folks at Ricoh to let you tell us the story and share that with the members of BPM Institute. You know, I still find, even though it's, early in 2017, there are a lot of organizations that wish they are where you are now, that are still having challenges taking some of those early steps. So before we let you go, I've got a few questions that have come in while we were chatting that I'd love to bounce off to you, just to get some tips on how folks can get their BPM efforts underway. So let me see if I can hit you up with a couple questions here.
Okay.
One of the first is folks always have struggles with product ownership. And so do you have any tips for folks on how they can get their arms around process ownership, and who should be responsible for some of those processes, within their organization?
Wow, that's a really good question, Greg. That's one that has come up here quite a lot. To me, there are two main things. But the first thing is that by documenting the process, if you can document your process in one single system, it makes it very easy then to share the process with different people and different stakeholders, which means that you're not having to answer the same question over and over again. It also makes it very easy for new and existing people or their team to see how things work. And if it's documented fully, it creates a case for them to go through the process first and check the process to try and get the answer, rather than coming back and having to ask the process owner. Some other experience we have from here is that most people don't like doing audits. So if you can make an argument that if you document the process and if you get it right, it's far easier to present a process all the time, rather than having to talk through step by step what you have to do. The second thing I would say is the recognition is key. So if you can encourage people to document their process, it gives an opportunity then for the management team to recognize those people are the experts on that process, and that they genuinely own the process. And what we found here is that a really good start is recognizing who the process champions are. We've done that through our company newsletter, emails from our managing director, and also through our company intranet. We get those process experts in, and we get them in every 2 months, and we get them to talk through their processes at the exec meetings and the chair meetings. And what we have then found is that created an environment to get other people on board, but they also wanted to go along to those meetings and champion the work that they were doing. So in summary, to me, the two key things are process, it has to be documented, and if it is documented, you can point people at the process rather than picking up the phone every time to answer the very same questions. And secondly, recognizing who the process champions are and making sure that they get plenty of airtime to talk about the processes and present the good work that they have done.
All right, excellent. Well, I appreciate that. And I think, a lot of organizations struggle with how to get, some of this tribal knowledge out of folks' heads and into the systems and into process maps. And so, a lot of times by default, folks will look for the process owner as the person they call when things break. But hopefully by getting that information into the system or within a tool like ProMap, they help to ensure that they can share that knowledge across the company. Documenting processes is a big task. Do you have any tips for folks on how you guys got started, or which ones you identified or prioritize? How did you start that task, there at Ricoh?
Really good question. My advice to people, would be to keep it simple and canvas your team and ask them for a process that they use every single day, or a process that they get asked questions on every single day. And it might be something as simple as how do I book leave, or how do I put an expense claim in, or how do I service a particular type of customer. But the answer to best place to start will be with your team. They operate the process every single day, so they will know exactly what the main pain points are, and they will know exactly what they want to get documented and share back with different teams and with different customers. So us here, many years ago, we went to different departments and we asked them to note down what they did at a very high level, and then we worked with them then to document those different processes. So typically we found if we get them a hand with the first one or two, once they had two processes done, they had the grasp of it, and they were then able to go off by themselves and to document the rest of the processes very easily afterwards. One thing I saw last year, which would definitely be worth looking at, and we use this in a lot of meetings now. There's a fantastic TED talk on YouTube, and it's all about making toast. And this presenter, he had a 15-minute chat, and it's definitely what we're looking at, but pretty much the chat is all about how to document a process very simply. And it's worth looking at, but what you will find is that every person has a different view on the process. But by getting people just to jot down, even on post-it notes, how they feel our process works at the moment, something that simple, that's a really good starting point for getting the process documented.
All right, excellent. And, you also mentioned during the talk that you guys were able to gain some executive buy-in. How far up within the Ricoh organization did that go, and how did that help you guys roll out the software?
Okay. Good one. Well, we began with in the business access team, and we knew that we had a problem where our processes and our quality management system simply wasn't working. It was very cumbersome, and we were getting asked the same questions and having the same problems every single time we had audits. But we also found too that when new people were coming into the company, more and more time was being wasted getting those people trained up. Waste probably isn't the right word there, but more and more time was being spent answering the very same questions and going through the very same procedures and processes, just showing new people to the company what they had to do. So we went to the managing director and went to the executive team, and we made a case to them that if they were willing to invest in a new system and invest in people and give people time to learn the system and give them backup as so that if they were willing to put time and effort in to document their processes, that in turn would save time in the long run. And what we found here is that with induction, it's far quicker than what it was 3-4 years ago. It's also standard, so the learning that we give to someone now compared to 6 months' time, it will be exactly the same. And it is moving all of the effort away from finding out how things are done to challenging and improving how things should be done. And lastly, for compliance, like even though we are a large company here and one of the leaders in the markets, we are subject to quite a lot of audits for financial and ISO and quality. But we also have to have regular meetings with our large customers and so on. So by being able to document and show that back to the management team, that we're able to clearly show exactly how things operate, that saves time for everyone right across the board, and that in turn meant that we were able to get quite a lot of buy-in from the managing director and his team.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, Declan. Unfortunately, we've got more questions than we have time, but I've got one more for you, as we wrap things up here. So, you guys got off to a nice start, and it seems like you've built up some good momentum. Any tips for our members and other practitioners out there about how to keep that momentum going with the process efforts in the future?
It's a good question. Like after we had all of our processes documented, we did go into a bit of a lull for a while, and we had a period of maybe a month or two where processes weren't getting updated, and we knew we had a problem. So we went back and we talked to people, and what we found is that we weren't communicating enough. So we engaged our marketing team. We now have a regular section on our company newsletter, what's happening with processes across the company. It's also on the company intranet, and if there are any notable process changes that fix a recurring problem, we'll make sure that gets communicated and that everyone is across the page on that. Recognition is important, so if we have someone who's doing a really good job with their process management, we make sure that they get properly recognized. And by that, it might be something as simple as a phone call from the managing director or from their division director. But yeah, just like small things like that. It is important just to give praise and recognition back to people who are putting the effort in. The last thing I would say is that induction is key, and the biggest learning point that we have found here over the last 2 or 3 years is that bringing new people into the company is fantastic. You have a massive opportunity there with fresh eyes and fresh people. And if they look at your process, they will be able to tell you very quickly if that process makes sense to them or not. And that in turn means that they can challenge the process, and they can put forward better ways on how that process should be used. So yeah, in summary, Greg, I would go for communication is important, recognition, and lastly, induction.
All right, super, Declan. Well, listen, thank you so much. Again, we wanted to thank you and also the folks at Ricoh for allowing you to come share the experience that you guys have had using ProMap. ProMap has a fantastic offering in the space. We would encourage folks to go to their homepage and check out some of the updated features and capabilities that the tool has. You can also schedule a demo with any of their folks and ask them some additional questions. But especially what I like what you guys have done at Ricoh is that we talk to a lot of folks that use BPM for some of their back office processes and some point solutions. But when you take BPM and you use it in direct support of your customers, and then extend BPM to your customers, I think you guys have done some great strides there. And we wish you continued success with the product and your efforts. And I would like to thank the folks at ProMap for introducing you to us and our members. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And we look forward to hosting you in an upcoming webcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.